Hi, and thank you for joining me on this tour of one of the farms that Greener Crop manages in the United Arab Emirates. This is a pretty special farm because it actually contains two different growing sections. On the one side, we grow using a hydroponic system, and on the other side, we're growing in soil. So that's a fairly unique setup in this greenhouse that we have, but it's a great way to basically illustrate the benefits of controlled environment farming in general. Now, where we are right now is in the head section of this farm. This section contains the control units that control the climate, but also the irrigation and fertigation of the farm. And as you can see behind us, it contains the water tanks that we use for irrigation, fertigation, as well as for the evaporative cooling system, which I'll explain in just a bit. In the front, you'll see the different nutrient tanks that we use. These contain the solution for the fertigation of the plants. You'll see the control unit for the fertigation and the irrigation, as well as the computer here that controls the climate control of this farm. Let's move on and have a look in the hydroponic section first. This is the hydroponic side of the greenhouse farm. Now, first of all, let's talk about why we grow in greenhouses. The whole benefit and purpose of greenhouses is to allow us to create a growing environment that enables us to grow year-round. In this part of the world where temperatures in the summer are extremely high, we need to protect the plants from those outside temperatures. This entire greenhouse is obviously built to achieve just that purpose. The first element of a greenhouse that helps achieve that purpose, and our first line of defense, is the cover of the greenhouse. Now, in this case, the cover of the greenhouse, both on the roof and on the walls, is polycarbonate. This 6mm polycarbonate sheet traps air in between it that serves as a type of insulation. Now, the second element that helps us maintain the temperatures is obviously our climate control. And in this farm, the climate control is done through the use of an evaporative cooling system. The evaporative cooling system works with these cooling pads that are made out of cardboard. Water trickles through the top of the cardboard to the bottom, and this honeycomb structure slows down the flow of the water to make sure that the water spreads evenly across the cardboard, across the cooling pad, and that it basically slows down slowly enough for the air that passes through it to transfer its heat and energy onto the moisture of the water. And as it comes out, it's already lost about 15 degrees in temperature. The air movement is aided through the use of these ventilation fans, as well as through the extraction fans that are on the other side of the greenhouse. That creates an air movement that basically creates suction, moves the air through these cooling pads, through the greenhouse, creating some circulation inside. That also helps with the pollination of the plants and then moves out. And that helps us reduce the temperature inside the farms by between 12 and 15 degrees, depending on the outside temperature. Another critical element for climate control are the climate screens that we have on top here. As you can see, the lines that are woven into this fabric serve a very specific purpose, and there are three reasons why we use climate screens. Now, the lines help with refracting and diffusing the light. The idea is that we don't want the light just hitting the top of the plants, but we want the light also covering a large surface of the body of the plants and the leaves on the lower part of the plants. And so that refraction and that diffusion that happens once the light hits those lines is how we achieve that. The other major benefit is that we can reduce the tip temperature of the plants. As the climate screen basically is folded out, it makes sure that we reduce the temperature on the top of the plants, where the plant is the most vulnerable and where a lot of the fruiting often happens. As you can see by these flowers, these are where the fruits are eventually going to come out. They're pretty exposed, and so these climate screens make sure that that is in a manageable temperature range. And the third major benefit of these climate screens is to stop the heat transfer between the plants in the greenhouse. During the day, we obviously want to make sure that the plants are, getting all the energy through that they need. They also are the right temperature and humidity range. But at night, when the greenhouse cools down, the plants actually start transferring heat towards the roof, and we want to stop that. That's what we use these climate screens for. Another major benefit of a controlled environment is that we can also control the spread of pests. Now, generally, since we're not growing in soil, that means that we don't need any herbicides because we don't have any weeds to fight. Right? That's already a massive saving in the use of chemicals. But also when it comes to combating pests, we have our unique ways of doing it inside a greenhouse farm that aren't available to farmers necessarily in conventional settings that are not growing in a controlled environment. And one of the tools at our disposal are beneficial predators. So if you look into this hanger, what you see on the glue trap here on the hanger are the eggs of beneficial predators that haven't hatched yet. Those beneficial predators will hatch from those eggs and will enter the environment and will start attacking the pests that we don't want in here. Now, it's up to us to identify the pests in the farm and to react accordingly and determine which beneficial predators are best suited for this environment. We'll show you what the sticky traps that we use to identify these pests look like, but generally, we also have these large traps spanned across the pillars of these greenhouses to capture as many insects in the environment as possible, and the other ones are hopefully taken care of by our beneficial predators, and we don't need to deploy any pesticides at all during the growing cycle in this farm. The hydroponic system that we use in this farm are hydroponic growing bags. These hydroponic growing bags that are placed on these gutters are about 1 meter in length, that's about 3 feet, and they provide the anchor for the roots of around 5 plants. Now, if you look closer, you might mistake this for soil, but the content of this growing bag is actually cocoa peat. Cocoa peat is an inert, a sterile substance that contains no nutrients of its own. All of the nutrients that these plants need are administered through the water and through these drippers that are positioned directly at the roots of these plants. Now, because we're able to control the environment in this greenhouse, because we determine the perfect mix of nutrients for these plants and can administer the exact amount of water and nutrients that they need, we're able to achieve significantly higher yields in a significantly shorter period of time than conventional farming. Now, any additional water that these plants don't need flows out through the bottom of these growing bags into these gutters and is recycled. And that's one of the ways that we're able to achieve water savings of 90 to 95%. We grow a variety of different tomatoes inside these farms, and on the other side of the 13 bays that we have on this side of the farm, we also grow sweet peppers. And if you take a look here, you'll see that these plants that are about 2.5 months old already are fruiting quite significantly. The density of the fruits on these plants is always quite astonishing, and we'll be harvesting these tomatoes within the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And the growing cycle for these tomato plants is about 9 months. After 9 months, we'll replace these plants with fresh plants as these plants go into a dormant stage, and we'll replace them with plants that are going into fruiting stage for us to be able to fit about 1.3 to 1.4 cycles in every year. We're now in the soil section of this greenhouse farm. And as you can tell, it's pretty much identical to the other side of this farm, the hydroponic side that we just visited. It's also 13 days long. It also utilizes an evaporative cooling system. The big difference, obviously, is that we're not using a hydroponic system in here, that we're growing in soil. And that's not 100% accurate either, because it's not just soil. Whenever we dig a hole that we place a plant in, we actually fill that hole with cocoa peat. Cocoa peat has a big benefit, which is that it retains water longer. And so we can keep that moisture around the roots of the plants for longer, whereas in regular soil, it just trickles through too quickly. Now, on this side of the farm, we're growing a variety of different fig plants, but also cucumbers. With figs in particular, it's really challenging to manage the pests. This is a plant that creates a very sweet fruit, very high in sugar, that obviously all insects love. And so it's important that we adjust the beneficial predators that we use to combat these pests. And so you'll see that this is a different sachet, this is a different type of beneficial predator that we use on this side of the farm. And the way we determine which beneficial predators to release is through the use of these sticky traps. So these strategically placed sticky traps, are in nice bright colors. They attract the insects stick to it, and we can then take that sticky trap and analyze it under a microscope, and in some cases even with our bare eye, and understand and identify what type of pests we're dealing with. The use of these large traps that we span across the pillars inside the greenhouse farms aids that mission, but that's not for discovery, that's really for prevention. And so the combination of these different effects along with some preventative measures is how we try and eliminate the use of any pesticides by using only biological agents to fight the pests. We're obviously in the cucumber section of this farm now. And what's really hard to believe is the fact that these cucumber plants that are at the moment about 9 feet tall, about 3 meters tall, are only 2.5 months old. These plants grow extremely quickly, and if you zoom in, you come a little bit closer, you'll see the incredible density that we find with the cucumber fruits in these plants. Now, these plants currently have harvested already about 4 kilograms, so that's about 8 pounds in the 2.5 months that they've been in the system. we're expected to achieve yields of between 5 and 6 kilograms or 10 to 12 pounds per cycle. Now, the cycle of these plants is fairly short. We keep these plants in our system for about 3.5 months, so we get about 4 cycles per year. And the idea is that before that plant starts tapering off from its fruiting stage and going into a more dormant stage, we replace that plant with a fresh crop, and those fresh plants are able to basically go straight into fruiting, and that's how we're able to maximize the yield, but also the time of the cycles for each of these plants inside these controlled environment systems. That's one of the big benefits of being able to grow year-round, and obviously it's one of the big ways for us to recover the cost of these investments and run profitable farms.